I'll start with you. And again, I'm going to play traffic cop. I'm going to try to catch you in the order in which I see you. I'll do my best. So you're first.
You noted the landfill was closed in 1974 because of a state landfill act.
Mm-hmm.
Did that act include provisions that mandated a specific kind of closure for existing landfills, or was simply abandoning them a legitimate option?
I don't know. I am not too familiar with the Landfill Act. That would be in a different program, so I can't answer that question in that regard. But
I think that first one was maybe 173.
301.
What we do know is this landfill never operated as a permitted landfill. And I think, and I haven't looked at 301 in a very long time, but I think it was sort of if you're going to continue to operate, you need to get a permit, and then clearly you're subject to those closure requirements. So I think it's possible that it wasn't real clear, there wasn't a lot said about specific closure requirements.
Did anybody hear Rebecca okay? Or just she needed a microphone? Okay, you're good.
Okay. And just, I know you didn't ask this, but there are literally hundreds of old landfills across the state that operated informally. Maybe,
In backyards?
well, yeah, all over, yeah.
Yeah, we're still discovering landfills, in fact, that we didn't even know about, like a new development. As cities are growing and expanding, new developments are going in, and all of a sudden they clear the lot for a new housing development or something like that. It's like, whoa, there's a bunch of garbage here or something like that. It's like, there's a new landfill we didn't know about, and that happens more frequently than I think.
I'm just looking for real facts and real data, and one thing I'd like to know if you have a final closure of the C Street landfill. I've noticed that it was listed as closed even in the EPA study.
Mm-hmm.
That means the EPA had it as closed, which I'm guessing they either had to get their information from the city, Simpson, or Ecology. So to have it in an EPA document, I got the document that has it saying it's closed. If it's closed, it means it has to have a closure document, and I was wondering if that's just something that I haven't seen.
Yeah, so documentation from that time is pretty sparse, and since it was never a regulated landfill, they wouldn't have had to go through, like, say, EPA's landfill program to get that closer. So it would likely, any correspondence there would have happened between the city and the county, which was in Mason County at the time. I do not have a document in my files pertaining to closure. I do, the Brown and Codwell closure plan was produced. It was consulted to Simpson at the time.
It was a draft.
It was a draft. Yeah, it was a draft document.
And according, I believe, to the health department, who did go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I have the comments to that, there was a lot of stuff that even was joked upon that the Ecology would never approve of that. So it went silent. And so I was wondering, since there was all this talk about closure, and it was supposed to, they were told they had to close it with an approved closure plan, and it just went dead. If there was one, that maybe I just didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
So it's talk.
Right. Whether it was closed or not, for our program, I'm sure you want to know if it was closed properly or not closed properly. It's kind of callous for us to say, but we don't really care because we're addressing it as a toxics cleanup site. So whether it was closed or not, we're going to obtain data and we're going to close it appropriately. We're not going to close it. We're going to.
But I don't think the records are real clear. And the way the solid waste regulations work, it's the local jurisdictions that are the regulatory authorities, not the state. So, the reference to closed landfill, I don't know if they just meant, hey, it's not being used anymore, or whether or not that implies it went through some closure process. The fact that there was a draft closure plan, but then we're not aware of any records that show that it was actually implemented. So, and you're welcome to look at what we've got. You can, do a public disclosure request.
I have everything for 3 years. in from your office, every email and everything.
Right.
I have a couple questions though that I just needed to ask you. Just said
Does it follow
something.
to that, because there is someone else that was waiting?
Okay, it was, okay.
Is it a different question, or is it,
It's a question that's not the same.
could you wait
I
then,
can.
I'll let Ms. Van Veen
Yeah,
go next,
sure.
and then you can go back again. She's patient, thank you.
We're talking about the soil and how dioxin adheres to it. I'm wondering if the maximum contaminant level of soil is 3 to 11 parts per trillion. And the Herrera report did testing of the ash right at the plant, at the dead house. And they got readings of 4,200 parts per trillion.
It was 4 parts per trillion.
4,
Well,
no,
I think you're talking about a different report.
yeah, it's in the Herrera report.
Right.
Which they did all the whole, the whole area. They were not
What we
plant.
need part of it.
Yeah.
They had 4,200 parts per trillion, the readings they had. And in the 1986 CHM2 bill report, they had in here that between July 1979 to November 1981, 4,528,700 gallons of sludge was disposed of along the whole area there in Hartnett at landfill. So if you are just saying that, well, because dioxin adheres to soil, if you have such an amount put in there, you don't believe that that is a serious problem? And particularly when it wasn't covered up? They just dumped it there, they didn't cover it.
Well, we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was.
I know, but they seem to make light of it and say, well, you're not going to be exposed to it because you have to intake it. So if it's hot and windy and dry, and this stuff, it's never been covered, and it's blowing all over, what prohibits from up there going down into the city from people inhaling it? Or if it is also, it was above where Goldville Creek is, above the height of that, and it says in here that the depth of groundwater is not known, but the site is 1/4 mile from Goldsboro Creek, which has an elevation of 140 feet lower than the disposal area. The creek is a logical discharge point for shallow groundwater. So if it picks up the groundwater with this and it carries it down to the creek, goes into open bay, and fish are going through there, what keeps the fish from taking some of that in and getting into their fatty tissue? Because they've never done any study about the fish. They did about the shellfish, but not the regular fish.
We did a sediments investigation back in 2008 and looked at sediments in Upper Bay, which is not the subject of this, but very briefly, there are some elevated levels of dioxins in Upper Bay. However, I do not believe that sludge that was put in the landfill became airborne and went down Goldsboro Creek. And
You know what I'm
that's
saying,
not
it's carried
dioxins.
by water
Well,
out there.
Well,
I mean, you
we
don't know.
could talk, well, we do know some things. We do know the chemical properties of dioxins. And like Jason pointed out, they do like to stay bound to the soil.
Or fatty tissue.
And so what we do know is for human health in regard to the landfill, the main way people would get it in their bodies is through incidental ingestion of soil. You know, you're gardening, you're playing, you're
And
in
people
your
were up
yard.
there tromping around down there, and they said there's bushes and things, but people go up there and pick the blueberries.
Right.
So if they're
Well,
tromping
I
around
don't,
in that uncovered soil.
I don't know that we have the evidence that blueberries pick up dioxin.
No, I didn't say that. They're walking around in there. It was never covered up.
Yes, and we're looking at it now. We're
I
going to do an
think they
investigation.
rely too much on that being bound to soil that it became harmful.
That's what the scientific information, that's the physical properties of dioxins. And again, our cleanup levels are based on if someone ingested, I forget what the amount is every day, 20 grams a day, every day for 70 years. If we did that and the concentration of dioxins was at our cleanup level you did that every day for 70 years, you would have a 1 in a million excess cancer risk from that
But how
exposure.
do you know that's the amount in the soil? If they were, it was producing
No,
gas that had 4,000, what is it, 4,200 parts per trillion. That's a lot.
Yes, it is, and I think I heard you say that's what they found at the mill property that doesn't necessarily translate, and that's what was at the landfill, and that's what people were walking through. We don't know that.
No, but
We don't
there's
know
no
that.
testing.
Well, as part of the remedial investigation, we will be testing for dioxins as well as other contaminants.
Well, I'm anxious to see that. One other thing, I wondered if you'd be
Is
interested.
this on the same topic? Because
Well,
I'm trying
I
to
just
be fair.
wanted to know something.
Okay.
If they would like a copy of what was told didn't exist. And it was the first site assessment that was done in February 2014 with an overall rating of 1.
Yes, so we've talked about this, and we talked about it. Yeah.
But I was told it didn't exist, and then I was told it was destroyed.
Well, I did not think that this was ever published. What we did, not trying to hide anything, a site hazard assessment, again, I'll be clear, is primarily a desktop exercise that looks at routes of exposure. It's a tool that we use to help us prioritize. You saw how many sites we still have waiting to be cleaned up, 1,683 or however many it was. So out of all those, we use the site hazard assessment rating to help guide us. Okay, I think we should work on this one next. It ranked a 1. That was the initial assessment. The person who did the site hazard assessment in my section went out and did a field visit, and at the time that she was there, she noted that there are a lot of blackberries growing there, and it was really made it kind of physically limited to be able to access the property.
So that
And that's what
changes
changed
from
to
1 to 3.
And I can tell you, Pat, it doesn't matter now. It doesn't matter because we are going to do a remedial investigation.
Well, it matters to me because I was lied to. I was told that it didn't exist.
By who?
Somebody in ecology did a request for,
But you got this as part of the public
no, but I got
disclosure?
it for something else. I didn't get
Is it real?
Yes, it's real.
Okay.
And you should know what your charts are.
Well, okay, I hear that this is very important to you, and we could talk more about it. I don't know who would have lied to you or why they would have lied to you, because everything we do is pretty much subject to public disclosure, and that's
And I
how
was
we
told
operate.
that it was destroyed, I was told.
Well, the only thing I can think of is it was a draft. We don't always keep every draft. Once a document is finalized, we don't keep every draft iteration.
That doesn't even make good sense. I mean, if you're doing a scientific investigation, everything should be kept until it's totally finished.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah, but this isn't totally finished.
No, the SHA was finished.
Maybe it's time to move back on. It's
Do you want me to keep this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plenty of copies of it.
All right.
So it's 7:01, so we have 29 minutes left before the official public hearing. Let me go back to the lady because I interrupted her to go
If
on.
there's other people, I could be asking questions in the next 30 minutes.
Okay, because I just want to make sure that everyone had an opportunity,
Right.
but you were next, so it's up to you. if you
Yeah,
want.
I guess I could throw an easy one out here.
And then you're next.
It's just the way you said here, and I just wanted to clarify, the city is giving you a list of what they think they should be looking when it's tested, what.
Yeah, that's the first item.
Why are you asking the city to give you a list, and why isn't this coming from real data that is found of what the history is? Why is it coming?
It is, I mean, as part of, it's not just a list, it's a memo, so I probably could have explained that a little better. They'll have to do the city under consultant will have to do a formal site history and go through all the records and figure out, come up with an idea of everything that might have been disposed there and come up with a list of things and decide, are we going to sample for this, or are we going to sample for this? These are going to be our screening levels.
So one of that, and I don't know because I'm not sure about the chemical analysis of stuff. Through all of our talk with Chris, he was more concerned about the burning up there and what happened to substances, I'll just call them substances, because they were burned at the low temperatures, creating their own dioxin issue, not just dioxin, they were, carcinogenic was the word he used. It goes, Chris Matthews.
Okay, sorry. I know who Chris Matthews is, I just heard Chris and I.
So, yes, we worked with Kirsten and Chris a lot, and Kirsten and Chris actually went out on location in September. And I gave them the disc that day, and they went right out there after they met with us. So that was, they read the information, they went out there. Then they went out there again with the city, I believe, in the early spring, probably February is what I'm hearing you say. That's when she gave it the rating of a 1. And when you compare, because I have both of them here, the 1 and the 3, and it does make a difference, and I know you say it doesn't, but you just got done saying also, it's the order that things get done, and that has mattered. We have a possible health situation in Mason County that's worthy of looking at, because our cancer incident rate is so high, and last time they laughed at me for saying that, it was number 1 in the state, so they said it's not about incidents, it's about mortality. And I know this isn't what we're talking about, but this is what got me involved in this to begin with. I was studying the watersheds, the groundwater. So, and what might there be a possible link to the cancer here? And so one thing led to the other. I wasn't like going after landfill.
I want to be clear that when the site hazard assessment was done, we began conversations with the city, and the fact that it was a 1 or 3, we would still be where we are right now.
I don't think that, and that's part of
And
what
I
I was
just want to
talking
be clear
about.
about that. There seems to be a lot of controversy.
Well, you
about
guys had a
how-
geoengineer hired,
No,
and,
we did not have geologists hired, and
well,
I could speak, we could talk on the site because I know what you're talking about, and I'm happy to address that.
yeah, why don't you talk about that, about the work they could have had done for half the price?
No, it's not work that could have been done for half the price. What happened was, we know that there's a lot of concern about this site, and when we did the site hazard assessment, we started talking with the city. I knew that it's going to take a while to get an agreed order in place. And I did have my staff look into what it would cost to have some groundwater monitoring wells put in, because I thought getting some data sooner would be helpful. However, groundwater at the site, as I understand it, is estimated to be about 120 feet deep, and the wells to monitor groundwater that deep are pretty expensive, and there was not funding in my budget to do that work, nor is Ecology obligated to do that work. We're obligated to engage with the city like we have been and get to where we are now, where we have a legally binding agreement and the city is going to do the remedial investigation.
So the information that you were given on the C Street landfill, your original, when you knew nothing about C Street landfill, why isn't it closed anyway? Clear back at the very beginning, you asked Chris to tell you about it. What? The very beginning of anybody talking about C Street.
Are you,
There was,
are you talking about 2 years ago?
yes,
Okay.
you didn't know anything, you asked him, which makes sense. But the information that he gave you, and I have a copy of the information he gave you, was the draft. It was from the draft, it's from the consultants for Shelton Hills in the unapproved, it hadn't gone through approval yet, the unapproved EIS. So it is one point of view that was not approved, and I wrote back the rebuttal of why a lot of that information wasn't so. That is in the final draft.
So
So,
I'm confused, you just said Shelton Hills EIS, and that has to do with C Street Landfill.
it does.
That's what we remember there was.
That's what we remember.
Okay, and that's when we came to the city.
Yes. Yeah, that was at the final, But there was a process, of course, like it all is, and then there was a scoping, and it was the scoping that I ended up seeing that the school was located next to the landfill, and asked them, okay? And then the next step after scoping was the draft, and then you have a time to, write about it and, public comment. And then again, it's the final, and then you get up and speak, and that's where you guys were at. So there was a lot taking place, and when I saw what information, I thought, that hadn't even been approved at that time, and he just took and copied and pasted everything and that's what you based everything off of. And it's not
You
all
kind of
that.
lost me on, I'm not sure what are you talking about the scope of work to put in the wells? I'm kind of losing what your point is, I'm sorry.
When you knew nothing about, it could have been Hanford. You knew nothing about C Street.
We knew it was on our list.
Yeah, but you didn't know what kind of land, why wasn't it closed, tell me about it. So that's the information he sent you, is pages and pages of the document from inside the EIS, that unapproved document. That's the information you got, and I know that whatever it is that, it's like, my whole thing tonight is gonna be based off of the real facts. And I see so much of things is, we got this information from this consultant, and it's not, no one's taking the real test. No one has taken a groundwater test. No one has taken anything. And so I see that in even the modeling for the SHA. Part of that is there are certain things that you need to do to be able to grade it when you've never taken a groundwater test.
Right, and the SHA, again, people often put so much weight on it as though it is based, it's before we've done anything. It's kind of looking at a worst-case scenario for different exposure pathways, but it's before we even started to work.
So, but it was the SHA that the Shelton wanted you to hire, why geoengineer was in the picture. It was because you were trying to find a ranking. The SHA, at that point, you were going to do the water tests and stuff. It was you and Jim Pandowski pulled it off and said, stop.
Well, I'm telling you, what happened was, I did ask Chris Matthews to get a cost estimate for what it would take to put in some groundwater monitoring wells, and it was more funding than I had to spend because of the depth of groundwater. I was trying to do something to give some answers sooner because I knew it was going to take a while to get to where we are tonight, where we're going to be ready to start remedial investigations. So I wasn't able to do that. So if you want to turn that into something, but that's all it
But
is.
2.5 years has already gone by and still no water test, and now
That's
it's going to
right.
be 3 more years if it follows the structure you have, so that's fine.
We'll have data well before then, but
What's that?
we'll have data well before 3 years. I mean, it could be
Well, that's the time.
before we get to the
just
cleanup
mentioned
action plan,
that-
before we're at the
Yes,
end of
the cleanup process.
Not a
is slow.
cleanup, not a cleanup,
Well,
the stage
we
3.
say cleanup process includes the remedial investigation, feasibility study, we use that term. Yes, it is slow. It takes a long time to get through the process. I agree with that.
At this point, I'd like to stop you, please, and let someone else have a chance, and then if there's still a few more people, if there's no more questions, we're happy to come back to you. But in the interest of fairness, this gentleman's been waiting, so.
Well,
Lord.
I'm also a member of Voice Action Project, and we're suing the city for a reason, and the reason is, the reason we're suing the city is that we've been talking to them, been talking to the mayor and the city manager and all these people, not only in Shelton Hills and Goose Lake, but also C Street. They don't want to hear it, and it's useless. I was actually going to bring up the same point Ms. Thompson did, that the chemicals of potential concern and the screening levels technical memorandum, it makes utterly no sense to interact with the city about this. The city has no clue, has not had a clue for 50 years. I know they're going to hire consultants. But when you start looking at the cost to clearly structure an investigation, any discussions you have with the city and all the discussions that we've had have to do with cutting costs, kicking things under the rug, pushing stuff aside, and get on with development. It doesn't have anything to do with finding out about toxins. They simply don't care. We've been having a conversation that's gone nowhere for over 2 years. So what concerns me most, and what I wrote in my comments after the other meeting, was the way you conduct, and this is what Ms. Thompson was talking about, the way you conduct this determination of chemicals of potential concern and the screening levels technical memorandum. If the city has any input to that, they will minimize any chemicals of concern. For example, mercury, a heavy metal in sludge. I know a little bit about that because I ran into it in the real estate business. I worked as a realtor for 25 years. So my one fear in my life, working in California, Texas, Arizona, was to come across something like this and get a client into this mess, closing on a toxic dump where there was unlimited liability. Amazingly, the mayor, who has a background, who's built single-family homes forever, and the city manager, they have no liability. They owe a moral duty to the citizens of this city to keep them safe. And forget about all this emphasis on we're going to have economic development at any cost. Their first obligation is to protect the health of the citizens. Now, in summary, I know this is kind of emotional, but to the extent that you take anything they say, I would look very carefully at the way you structure your list of chemicals of potential concern and what you screen for.
Yeah, you need to keep in mind, though, that ecology has the final say. That document must be approved by ecology, otherwise they don't get to go to the next step. And this kind of applies for every single document that they have to produce that's in the agreed order. It has to be written to satisfaction of ecology. And it's my job as an engineer, and I have a responsibility to protect the citizens of the state and the environment. Thoroughly review everything that's submitted to me and make sure it's compliant with the law and that it's protective of human health and the environment. I don't know if that's much assurance to you, but that's my role in this process, and that's what I'm meant to do.
This is a little bit of an aside, but I do want to say this. I mentioned the C Street dump to Brian Farrell, the developer, the northern representative of the developer for Hall Equities, when they were talking about Shelton Street. Shelton Hills Development. I said, Brian, I think his first name is Brian. I said, Brian, you're going to disclose to everybody who buys a house and all the lessees in the Shelton Hills development that they're between two toxic areas, right? You're going to, you have to, by law, disclose to everybody that these toxic situations exist there. Otherwise, they can sue you, because that's the way it works in California and every state I've worked in real estate business. He said, well, I didn't know there was a dump there. Actually, we'll work it out somehow. The developer did not know about C Street Landfill. By the way, a local commissioner, Randy Netherland, was standing, he's a licensed realtor. He was standing to my right when I was talking to Brian Farrell. He went, he's a rather rotund guy. He said, ho, that's California. We don't have to do that stuff here. This is Mason County. He said that. He said that. I almost fell, I was so disgusted, in mid-sentence, I walked away and just left Errol standing there, hopeless. And this is the way conversations go in this city and in this county when it comes to the environment. They won't develop it at any cost. It's an old timber town, and they have no ecological awareness at all. So any questions you ask them about what chemicals to be concerned about, they don't give a hoot. They do not care.
Well, if they don't produce a document that meets our level of satisfaction, I'll write the thing myself. And we have the authority to do that.
You may have to do that.
Or work for me.
Okay.
Agree. You're right, it's in our authority to do that.
Did you have a comment? I saw your hand up earlier, such as a thumbs up. Okay, then I saw your hand up.
I was just going to ask how much leeway Department of Ecology has to change the process that is laid out. I mean, that's pretty well set, that you ask the city to create a list and then you look at it and comment.
Yeah, well, that list, that's usually part of the remedial investigation work plan. I pulled it out just to help the process move along. If we can come to agreement on that list, it'll make doing the work plan easier.
Okay.
And it'll, in theory, speed things up. That's why I did that. A lot of site managers don't do that.
Okay, we have 12 minutes left before I get to Ms. Van Eyck. Is there anyone else who hasn't already had a chance to ask a question? Would you like to ask a question now?
Jason, did the city contact you, or did you contact the city?
That would have been before me. To start this process,
Yes.
Rebecca.
That would have been me. We talked to the city. I don't remember, I don't think, they've been cooperative since we've talked to them. But I don't think they called and said, gosh, we want to come under this agreed order and do this cleanup. But when we talked to them about it being on the list and we think it's time to take a look at it, they've been very cooperative.
It's funny, as soon as they got word of the suit against them, you people look here.
I think we were there first. We've been working with the city, well, over, a year and a half?
We've been around.
Shortly about the time that we did the SHA.
Yeah, we issued the preliminary, the PLP letter, the potential liable party letter, I want to say November of 2014 is when we named the city a potential party.
And there was
we
time-
began this process.
There was time before that was set up for that.
Okay, this gentleman was first.
Yeah, it's related to her thing is what.
Oh, let your husband talk for a minute.
I will.
Just a quick question. Are you an enforcement agency? You've got all these guidelines, he's talking about the law.
Yes, it's illegal.
What if the city doesn't want to play ball with you? Can you force them by law to do something?
Yes.
Your agency
We
can?
can issue an enforcement order that requires them to do it, and if they refuse to do it, we can take them to court and get a judge to order them to do it, or we can do the work ourselves and then cause.
Thanks for clarification. Now, I've heard you speak to the meeting before when you stated that you're not an enforcement agency.
Oh, no, we are. I think enforcement can have a different meaning to different people. We prefer to work cooperatively with people. If we get people to agree and to work as a partner, we usually get a better, quicker outcome. But we do have, under our state cleanup law, we do have an enforcement authority.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Eyck, and we have 9 minutes left, and I should be able to get you in again, unless there's anybody else. Go ahead.
Okay, then why? The agreed order for Goose Lake was issued April of 2001. It's 2015, and it is squat, nothing's been done. And
It's
it's
getting done, but it's been very slow, you're right.
well, my God, it's 14 years,
It
and
is.
nothing's happening, because it's Rainier, and they're like, well. The other thing is, the city of Shelton was offered help with Brownsfields, they turned it down. They voted against it in the council, they didn't want anything to do with it.
You mean the integrated planning agreement? I'm not sure.
Well, they said it was a brownfield cleanup in the area.
Well, EPA has brownfields grants.
Yeah,
and
well,
we-
whoever offered it,
I'm
they
not
turned it
sure
down.
which one you're.
Well, they turned it down. They didn't want any part of it. They didn't want to know anything about it. So that's the area.
Well, we're gonna find out now.
Why is there code enforcement been about Bruce Lake?
Please remember today, we're here to talk about the
I know,
Street
but
Landfill, and we're running out of
it's
time.
relative, because it's taken that long, and nothing happens, what do you expect?
Please remember, I'm going to interject for a second, please remember that you do have an opportunity to put your comments in writing. You have an opportunity to present them tonight orally, either with me up here or with Andy in the listening station. So we have a few minutes left, so please, I want you to know, this is not your only opportunity to comment, this was your opportunity to ask specific questions. So I'm going to let, we have 8 minutes left. I'll let Ms. Thompson have another go at it, and if there's anyone else, otherwise we will end at 7:30 and go into the public hearing part. And Jason and Rebecca will be around. I'm sure that they'd be happy to stand and talk to, while someone is up here giving their testimony, that they would be able to talk with you. So, Ms. Thompson.
Well, I guess through this whole thing of years of dealing with things now, it was one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with as a citizen is that I really do believe that ecology was a protective agency for the people, for the public. And what I'm seeing in all the reading that I do is more cooperation with municipalities and industries. And it was really hard for me to read that they had talking points where they meet constantly to develop talking points of what they're going to say to the public so that they're allowed X amount of conversation, everybody says the same thing. And then that they have both city approval, Rainier approval, and Shelton Hills approval before they ever put something out for the public to read. I have a problem with that, but I just want to read this with one little thing here. This is in 2004, and this is from Ecology Fern. I can't pronounce his last name, I don't know. What is it? Svensson, okay. Anyway, it was 2004, and it's high priority. It's on the C Street Landfill. Hi, Mike. I think his name is Goland or something. He worked for the city of Shelton, okay? Would you answer the following questions regarding the C landfill? Number 1, when did the facility finally close? 2, what rule did it close under? 3, when was the final permit issued for the site? 4, what kind of permit was issued? 5, by whom? Anyway, the whole time in 2004 was one letter that came from your department saying you were going to come and do an SHA. They didn't
Is that what
show.
the letter was in reference to, or I don't know?
It was the same year, so I'm going to guess 2004. They sent a letter, Ecology say, to the city saying they were coming to do the SHA and told them about what an SHA is and all that, and they never showed up. And the very next year, they sent one to the county with the same information saying they were coming, and they never came. So that was 2004 and 2005, and it went dead after that for all these years. And what happened is I'm the one that came in before the city council with the chronological history and asked them, and we sent letters to you, asked them to have an SHA done, request from Ecology to have that done. And so with their request to you, then you started trying to figure it out, and that's how it ended up happening that you were going to have some tests done. And we were working with Chris, and he was keeping us abreast of what was going on. And so I do know we went over what the tests were that he was going to do and how far he was going to drill to the bottom, and he was real concerned about carcinogenic things, even more than the dioxin. And the dioxin gets all the the hype because it's on top and it's important, but Rainier is on the very bottom for years in those years. And I have a book here too. If in your research you want to look, this book here, and
When you say Rainier was on the bottom,
The bottom.
literally the landfill?
yeah, they had the landfill at first. And so during those years, this book will tell you, this is called the First Century Shelton Plus 10. And anyway, it goes through the whole history of Rainier, what they were producing at the time. Besides rayon, they were actually making explosives. It was during the war. They were using cellulose to do that, and all kinds of different things that could be producing different chemicals, and not knowing what you're going to find because it was a very chemical kind of company. And so for I don't know how many years, from 1928 upward, I don't know how far up in the pile they'd be. Anyway, I'll wait for my turn to talk at the thing.
But would you be willing to give us the information about the book, the title?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Keep it right here and here. I have just got that book, give that book to you.
I have it, all my marks in here. I don't want to give it.
I can write it in.
Okay.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Is there anyone else who has a question?